So, since I last talked about UK e-bike law, a lot of comments from abroad, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. So I'm just going to reiterate, it's in the title, UK e-bike law. Not Dutch, not Norwegian, not German, not American. Although the Americans seem to be on our side, because the whole thing's ridiculous. But today, I want to talk about the politics. And we're going to have a look at what the parties think. Because I'm going to say this now and I'm going to say it at the end. They all talk green, but none of them walk green. I've said this before in a lot of my other videos, and this is why. So as it stands, the Conservatives seem to be happy with the status quo of things, and they're not really bothered about any green issues. They're not bothered about the e-bike laws that we currently have. And they don't seem very bothered about updating what the public wants. It would be fine if they weren't all talking green all the time and, oh, we need to get emissions down on this, emissions down on that, and we need to do this, that and the other. But the solution's staring them in the face. I use my car 20% of the time I used to use it because of my use of e-bikes. And I have a very high power car. It burns petrol, 18 to the gallon. So imagine if I was using that the other 80% of the time that I'm using e-bikes. The emissions. This goes the same for everybody. Once you have an e-bike, you use it a lot. And it's affordable. It's so affordable. When you look at the payback over the first year, most e-bikes, if you use them enough, they pay for themselves in 2 years. So it's basically free transport if you're going to use it over the 2 years period that you would be using your car. There's that to bear in mind. So while Sunak sat there going, yeah, we need to do something about the environment, this and this, and we're going to tackle it this way, it's staring them in the face. And I think they're just deliberately avoiding it. So let's have a look at Labour. Currently the front runners to win the election, but they have to do everything by committee. So if they're in charge, what are we looking at? Well, it'll take decades for them to get off their backsides and sort of put anything realistic into any sort of fruition. And at the moment, they're quite happy with the status quo, but obviously disabled beetles and, cats with one leg will also have to have their say. And this is why if Labour get into power, forget the e-bike thing. It's going to stay as it is for the foreseeable future. And it's the last thing on their minds, to be honest. Very annoying. So interestingly, the Lib Dems have some reasonable ideas of what they want to do, but I tried to join their bike initiative Facebook page today, and because I won't vote Lib Dem, this is what we got. So while they have some interesting proposals, and the fact that they do see e-bikes and cycling and the whole green initiative as something positive, restricting people from having their say because they're not on your team and you're not in their bubble seems ridiculous. So you're not getting all sides of the argument. I'd like to see more people have input from other parties, but obviously it's their little thing, and we're not going to be allowed in it unless we say we're members or voters of the Dems. Next up, the Green Party. And you think they'd be all over this with a big brush. And annoyingly, they're not. They live in this fantasy world where they think 15-minute cities, towns, neighbourhoods are the solution. and all these 15-minute cities are in the centre of London, so everywhere's flat. So you won't need an e-bike. But there's the rest of the country. You know, hilly Yorkshire isn't flat London. And as for the fantasy thing about 15-minute neighbourhoods, it's just that. It's just a fantasy. And even if it comes about, 100 years down the line, we might have a dozen in this country. It's not going to happen. Like, it really annoys me that the Green Party, who you thought would be all over this, are probably the biggest barrier to it. It's ridiculous. So this leads me on to the next thing. Anything e-bike law-wise that ever gets modified will be based around London. The view of London, how it works in London, and nowhere else. Because London's where the power is. And when you look at negativity around e-bikes in London, it's things like the Lime e-bikes littering the roads and everything else. It's battery fires. It's basically people being a nuisance on an e-bike. Well, when you get a lot of people populating one area and space becomes a premium, of course this is going to happen. But it's not the same for the rest of the country. That's one of the annoying things. It's not the same for the rest of the country. And because we have this London-centric view of what e-bikes are, I mean, the Lime bikes, I've been to London and seen the Lime bikes littered all over the place. They're an absolute nuisance. But if there weren't Lime bikes, if there weren't these electric bikes that you littered all over the streets and people were using their own e-bikes and were encouraged to do so, resolves half the problem. You know, because somebody took a bun to let Lime, you know, become the prominent e-bike company in London, you know, I can't see any other reason than letting them do this than somebody took a bung somewhere in government. I really can't. Because there's no reason for it. The Boris bikes were bad enough. They were littered everywhere. And it's the same with the scooters. They're littered everywhere. Everywhere. The other thing is, London isn't really set up for e-bikes, or any bikes really. You can just go and watch videos all day long of people clashing with cyclists in central London, clashing with e-bikers in central London, because nobody lives there, so nobody cares. And again, that's reflected nationally. The whole London-centric thing is reflected nationally. Fire service hate e-bikes because of the fire issue, but it's only the older e-bikes that are having this problem where the chemistry of these batteries, or cheap batteries, where the chemistry of these batteries are breaking down. I'd like to see some of the Chinese e-bike companies start fitting UL batteries, or offering retro UL batteries or IP7 batteries for a lot of their e-bikes. It makes them safer. It makes them safer in a big way. And I think there's money to be made in it. People that have their e-bikes now and absolutely love them, you know, it's cheaper to upgrade your battery than it is your entire bike. And a Chinese e-bike with a UL battery on isn't going to be its cheapest. But I've seen a few out there that are out. You know, you can throw these batteries in the water for 30 minutes, dry them off, plug them straight into your bike, and you're away. And these are on IP6 e-bikes. I'll leave a link. Well, I'll just show you on here. Yeah, they're very good. They're safer. They're the safest option e-bike wise at the moment. A bike that you can ride all year round in all weathers with a waterproof battery. Fab. But we're not getting anything like that here yet. And if you do want something like that, you've got to try and get it across the pond, which is expensive. So that's where we're at. We're at sort of like four parties all arguing amongst themselves, or more to the point, not arguing amongst themselves because they're not discussing it. And it's the greenest option out there. Don't get me wrong, I'm no big greenie. You know, I want to see more people on e-bike seats because the mental health benefits. I just think they're amazing. The health benefits. You can make e-bike riding as hard as you want, but you're getting out. And if you get absolutely knackered by the end of it, if you haven't used your battery, you don't have to put any energy into coming home. So you can go further away, go on adventures. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep saying it. All these parties talk green, but not one of them walks green. When you consider an e-bike has a 200th of a battery size of a Tesla, which people are driving around in on their own, carrying all that weight, electric cars aren't the answer. E-bikes are. E-bikes are the solution to a lot of modern problems, because you're not on Facebook when you're out on your e-bike. You're not scrolling. You're out taking it all in. You're out on an adventure every time you go out on your e-bike. It was interesting reading some of the comments in my last UK e-bike law video from people abroad and how we should be doing it. Some on our side, some calling for more legislation, lessons, CBT courses, insurance. The solution to e-bike law is to keep it as simple as possible. The more complicated you make it, makes it a barrier to entry for a lot of people. It's stupid. Make it simple. Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. And then we'll get more bums on seats. And more bums on seats means a greener society. Less emissions. Anyway, that's it. Have a nice day, everyone. Oh, don't forget, Tannis Armour install coming up tomorrow. So if you're interested in getting that back wheel off, how to do it, installing Tannis Armour to stop you getting punctures. I'll be doing a further video in a few weeks' time when it turns up, because my flat out, I left the lid off of it properly and it just aerated, so I've had to order some more. Belt and braces, you won't see another puncture. Anyway, have a nice weekend.